Welcome into a Monday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha, back with you. It's been a couple weeks, Alex, since we've been on our normal schedule. Obviously, we had the Christmas holiday. We had New Year's Eve last Monday, but we are back. We should be pretty much on the same rotation going forward, and we're almost at the halfway point now, all of a sudden, in the NBA season, and we're kind of right in the thick of the halfway point, even though we're not at the 41-game mark in the fantasy season, with most leagues, ending a couple weeks before the regular season ends. As always on Mondays, we'll go through news from the weekend, look ahead to the week ahead of us. Obviously, we got a couple of teams with a one-game week, Alex, kind of a disaster scenario. There's a game going on in France for some reason. I don't know why that is happening, but it is. So if you have players on the, Cavaliers, who else is on the 2-game week?
I thought it was the Nets.
Nets, I believe. Yes. Yeah, we're sending the Cavs and the Nets over to Paris. So that'll be on Thursday, right around 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe. But disaster scenario, if you have Mikal Bridges or Donovan Mitchell, any of those guys. I mean, what do you do in this situation? Are there enough 3-game teams this week? Because there aren't a ton of 4-game weeks. It's relatively balanced, but is there a league size or a situation in which you still start someone like Bridges?
Well, I have Jared Allen in our 16-team
Maybe that's a better one.
stake league, but I'm just going to start Gafford because he has 3 games. I mean, if a guy has a 1-game week and someone else on your roster who plays the same position as 3, it's almost a guarantee that you basically have to play the guy with 3 games. So that's what I'm going to do. It's just kind of unfortunate that you are in the situation.
Yeah, growing the game, man. There are pluses, there are minuses.
They couldn't send Wembanyama back over there for fun. Like, I don't.
That is strange. Yeah, I don't. Usually there is some connection that you could trace, right? And unless something super obvious is slipping my mind, like, is there anybody or like any front office member for either of these franchises that
Jay-Z's with the Nets? He did that particular song about Paris.
That's right.
That's
is he still with the Nets? Didn't he have to liquidate?
I actually don't know if he has like even a small percent of the Nets at all. I don't know.
That's right. People forget that song regarding Paris. We'll leave it at that. We'll get into live viewer questions as we always do later in the pod. So feel free to throw those in the chat. We will hit those rapid fire style as we go along. We'll be going for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how many questions we have. We'll go through some news, Alex, and then talk some waiver wire as well. A lot of kind of nicks and cuts type of injuries this weekend. Guys who are entering the week day to day. For example, the Milwaukee Bucks are on a 4-game week. Damian Lillard is out due to a personal matter tonight against Utah. I am terrified to lock him into my lineup and maybe only get 1 or 2 games when you got, I think, 12 teams on a 4-game week. Jayson Tatum, he's going to miss a game to begin the week as well. There are a bunch of those types. Zion Williamson, on that list as well.
Yeah, again, you said it. Tons of bumps and bruises. It wasn't even it was hard to do waivers this week for that particular reason because it's like, well, I could pick this guy up, but is the guy ahead of him really even going to miss that much time? Like you have, DeAndre Ayton, for example, who I have on a team. It's just like, I don't know when he's coming back. It could be as soon as next game, which is like, who knows? Mm-hmm. So it's just mostly annoying from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, I'm just annoyed. I'm annoyed right now. And you're totally right. I mean, I'm annoyed with Damian Lillard's performance, even when he's healthy and on the floor, right? I mean, that's something I want to hit on. It is, obviously it's been affecting Milwaukee in real life. They've been on a bit of a slide. Giannis called out the equipment manager over the weekend. He's got to step it up. I saw somebody quote tweet that with Thanasis, implying that he is the equipment manager, which was very funny and also accurate. But Damian Lillard is part of the issue here. Obviously, Milwaukee still struggling in transition, still struggling on defense in general. And Giannis is having an otherworldly season. Like, he's been the one constant, even when they're losing to Indiana and, struggling to beat San Antonio. It's Lillard, it's some of the other role players who are struggling, but Giannis has been ultra consistent. He's been fantastic this season. Whereas, you look at the last 2 weeks, Damian Lillard is like barely a top 50 fantasy asset in that time. And if you go by per game value, he's actually outside of the top 50.
Yeah, Bucks are 3-4 over their past 7 games. You mentioned it with Lillard, man. He's shooting 26% from 3 over his past 8 games. That's really dragging also down his field goal percentage and obviously his 3-pointers made. And that the combination of things is like when a guy who's a high volume scorer also goes on a 3-point slump, it brings down 3 categories. It brings down your total threes, your field goal percentage, and your points. So it kills you in fantasy. But yeah, I mean, Giannis has continued to play at an MVP level. Just kind of fighting through it game after game, back-to-back 40-point performances. He's just a monster, man.
So there's a report over the weekend, that Milwaukee probably won't be in the mix for anything too major, as far as the trade deadline is concerned. And, that's not surprising, right? Because do they have the assets to go after anybody major? I don't know. I don't think so. Do they have the cap room, it sounds like, Zach LaVine is just going to be like auctioned off for free, whoever's willing to take that contract. But I don't know if Milwaukee's even interested in that. So, Alex Caruso was the name that was brought up as a target. I think there's going to be like 10 teams vying for Alex Caruso. And look, I love Caruso. I think the Lakers were stupid to let him walk in the first place. He might, like, if he goes for 2 firsts, is that going to be like the lowest profile player ever to fetch 2 first-round picks?
It might be. They're gonna be bad first-round picks, obviously. But at the same time, he's never healthy either. Mm-hmm. Like, he can barely stay off the injury report. That would be my concern if I was some team trading for him, which is like, we're going to get him in the building and it's going to be good, but like, is he even going to be healthy in the playoffs? And we give up 2 first-round picks for that. I think there are other guys, probably not as good as Caruso, but I think there are other guys you could get into the business of if you're Milwaukee. Like, you can't take a chance on like DeLon Wright. You tell me Portland wouldn't be interested in like, Matisse Thybulle maybe, giving him up. I think there are some names out there where, you might be able to sort of pivot off of Caruso.
Somebody who was, I'm just trying to use or find a reason to use this word, bandied about on Bucks Twitter over the weekend was Malcolm Brogdon. Obviously that comes with a cost. I believe he has another year in his contract beyond this one. I don't think he's expiring. So I don't, I'd have to look into how realistic that is and what you're sending out cap wise. But on paper, I don't mind it. I have no idea if Malcolm Brogdon would ever play for the Bucks again, the way that ended. But in terms of, kind of aiming relatively low, finding a guy that's likely to be traded, doesn't really fit in with the direction of his team and meets what the Bucks need, I think that one would make a lot of sense before you start looking into all the cap stuff.
My main issue with grabbing Brogdon is the Bucks don't need more offense. The Bucks are a good offensive team. Chris Middleton is back up to playing 30 minutes. The numbers with Giannis, I actually looked this up today. Giannis, Middleton, and Lillard is plus 14 per 100 possessions. When those guys are on the court, there's no problems. A lot of the problems just come from defense. So Brogdon doesn't solve your defensive problem. Just from a talent standpoint, I think you could get him and it's fine. But again, to me, I would rather chase after someone who is a proven either backcourt or wing defender.
Not making fun of your misspeaking there, but I need to say on Thursday on the XM show, my wonderful co-host, whom I love and respect, Jeff Erickson, said Faily Danasy instead of Daily Fantasy, and
that's awesome.
It's not left my head since then, and I'm sure I've made my fair share of those type of mistakes, but no, you're right about that. I mean, Brogdon in some ways, I don't think would just instantly solve all the Bucks issues, but I mean, realistically, like what type of player, whether it's a certain name or a position, a size, like what is missing right now? Because it's really hard to say, like, why are they struggling so much with transition defense? I mean, obviously, Brook Lopez is somewhat of a plotter, but this is not like it's been a massive glaring issue for Milwaukee to this degree in the past.
Yeah, the transition defense thing is tough. Some of what makes like a really key part of transition defense or something that can make your transition defense better. It's interesting because if you have a floor spacing center, he can be at the top of the 3-point line a lot. And then when the other team starts going, he can be back at the rim faster and protect the rim. It should work with Milwaukee, but it doesn't. I don't know. To me, some of this is like the Bucks, their defensive rebounding is not that good this year. They're a very average defensive rebounding team. They're 14th in defensive rebounding. And when you have Giannis and Lopez out there, it's like those guys should be grabbing every rebound. And if you can't grab defensive rebounds, transition isn't good. You can't grab offensive rebounds. Yeah. Transition isn't good. They're not a good offensive rebounding team either. And then they also don't force any turnovers on defense. Like those are their main problems right now is they don't force the other team to give up the ball and they don't crash the boards that well. And you just end up losing the possession game a lot.
Bucks were third in defensive rebounding percentage a season ago. And, I think some people would say, well, Brook Lopez, he's not a great rebounder. He doesn't, maybe that's a negative in that regard, but he's not a high rebound player, but he's still like a plus in that regard. Like I think he's clearing guys out. He's just not necessarily grabbing the boards himself. And like you said, when you have those two out there, not that many teams are playing, 7-1 Giannis, 7-1 Brook Lopez, players like that in the front court anymore. Like there's no reason you should be middle of the pack in that stat. We mentioned Chris Paul. That's the big kind of long-term injury coming out of the weekend. He is expected to undergo surgery at some point in the next few days. Looks like he will miss somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 weeks. So on the low end, maybe he's back right before the All-Star break. I think the way this lines up, you probably give him the All-Star break and hope that you can get him back around February 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I think so. He missed his first game. Was that yesterday? That was yesterday against Toronto.
Yep.
Warriors got beat 133 to 118. They got crushed. That was at home too, right?
Yeah. Toronto jumped out to like a 15, 20 point lead early and it was basically over.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about that trade, you and I, Knicks Raptors that much. I really like it for Toronto, but it is kind of interesting how before they were trying something so like they were Siakam at center and they were doing a bunch of these playmaking forwards, and then they're like, you know what? Jakob Poeltl at center, Emmanuel Quickley at point guard. Things are we're just in a normal NBA roster now, and they're playing well. But so we saw some minutes in this Warriors game. Moses Moody basically was like the main beneficiary. Played 22 minutes after playing 6 the previous game, and then not playing before that. Kind of TBD on whether he can do that much. Moody's just been one of those guys we've seen flashes from ultimately. Yep. And so I don't think he's just not someone to add in fantasy. Like he had 21 points in 22 minutes. That's great. Like, but is he ever, and he only had 3 rebounds, 1 assist. Like all he's going to do is shoot threes. If he's playing 22 minutes, he's not going to give you that much.
Yeah, I mean, he went 7 of 9 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3 last night. That's just not how it's normally going to go. It was just a weird game from Golden State all around. Wiggins no-showed again, only played 17 minutes. Curry, 0 of 9 from beyond the arc. That's second time in a month that's happened. Like Clay's really the only guy who showed up in the starting lineup. He had 25, 5 3-pointers. Trace Jackson-Davis looked okay, but a lot of that ended up coming in garbage time. The Warriors are obviously in trouble here. I mean, the last thing they needed was to lose, another key piece like Chris Paul. But, from a fantasy perspective, I think it gives more of a boost to Podziemski, if anything else. And he was awful yesterday. You're just going to have to live with these, 2 for 11, 1 of 8 from 3 type of games, with a rookie, a guy who wasn't necessarily expected to be a big time contributor this season. But to me, he probably gets the biggest boost over the next 5 or 6 weeks. We could do a little Toronto, New York trade talk because you're right. I think you and I have talked about it, on the RotoWire NBA show over on SiriusXM NBA. We've talked about it on the XM Fantasy show as well. But we haven't done this pod together in a couple of weeks. I love this for Quickley. I think that's been kind of the resounding opinion. And, the numbers look pretty good. He's played 4 games now with Toronto. He's also not shooting the ball well at all. And he's still averaging 17 points a game. He's taking a ton of shots. He's playing more minutes. He's shooting 39% only from the floor. The 3-point shooting has been better. He's 5 of his last 16, but he started off hot in Toronto, still over 40% in those last 4 games. I think he could be, probably not 36 minutes a night, but 32, 33 minutes. And, if you extrapolate out, what his numbers have been, not only this season, but the last couple of years in New York, I mean, going from 23, 24, 25 minutes off the bench at best on a lot of nights, sometimes fewer, to now seemingly being locked into this 30-plus minute role, I think he's going to be a monster going forward. I mean, the assists have been the number one thing. And he's just a bigger guy than I realized. Like I've watched a few of these Toronto games. Like he does not look like a point guard. Like he has the size almost of a more of a shooting guard, small forward type. Like he's bigger. He's added weight. I feel like he's like grown an inch or two since coming into the league. He used to be so slight during those early days with the Knicks, but he's rebounding well. He's obviously going to be a high volume 3-point shooter. And I think he's very easily, top 100, top 75 type of guy the rest of the way, if not higher. I mean, what kind of ceiling are we looking at if the shot starts to come around. If he can shoot 43, 44% even instead of 38, 39.
Yeah, I'd have to. There's an easy way to like find out. He started a stretch of games last year. We could always just like extrapolate that out. But I will say, just in these since January 1st, since the new year, it's obviously a small sample size, but he ranks 62nd. Yep. And like you said, he has room to grow in terms of his field goal percentage. I think his passing numbers are legit. I mean, per 36 minutes for his career, he's basically been like a very steady, 20 points, 5 assists. And I think that can even increase a bit because he's a legitimate starter in Toronto, where he is effectively the third option there behind Siakam and Scotty Barnes, especially as a playmaker. There's going to be a lot of nights where I think Barrett scores more than him, but Quickley is asked to be a playmaker. So I think he should be able to retain. I'd be shocked if the rest of the year, like from here on out, he didn't finish top 75.
Yeah, I think he could even knock on the door of top 50. That might require a Pascal Siakam trade, which I think is very possible. We got that report, I think it was Saturday, from Shams, that it was like hours after there were rumors that the Kings were engaged. It was like the Kings have now backed off. And all right, I believe it, I guess, but I don't think the door is necessarily slammed shut on that. Obviously, I think other teams will be in the mix. I know Dallas has been mentioned as a destination. I think that would make a lot of sense for the Mavs. I don't know what they're sending back to Toronto in that deal, but
I will say I really don't like Siakam to Sacramento. I know the deal is dead, like it's not going to happen, but like to me that I hate the fit. I don't think you can put like he can't shoot threes. So you're going to have him and Sabonis on the court at the same time. Teams are going to play like a 3-2 zone against you or a 2-3 zone against you.
Counterpoint, he doesn't know that he can't hit threes. He will take threes at least. He's shot them horrendously so far this year. But I don't know, like he's still somebody that you can't just completely leave him, right? I mean, on the season, he's at 29%. Last year, 32.5%. Year before that, 34. He's been a 35, 36% shooter from three in the past, but we're talking 2019.
He's better lately. I mean, if you just grab his last, 15 games, he's shooting 46% from three. It's only on 3 attempts, though.
Yeah.
I just think they need like defenders. To me, I wanted them to be the OG Anunoby team.
Sure.
I wondered if they would consider trading Keegan Murray for OG Anunoby. They probably don't feel like that's worth it. But yeah, to me, Siakam is just too. I feel like in the playoffs, teams would just leave him completely open, and Sabonis, and then I just don't think it would work.
Fair enough. I also think Siakam's shorts are too long. He needs to shorten them up. He's kind of one of the last guys who's still wearing shorts that are like down the knee. Just something to monitor, something to keep an eye on.
I gotta find these highlights.
Well, I think part of it is he wears like the tights that are always the same color as the shorts. Maybe it just blends together. It's just something I've noticed. I think he could go a size down, and maybe that would help him out. Quickly, by the way, 21 starts for the Knicks last season. He did average almost 39 minutes a game. Hat tip to Tibbs on that one. So take these with a grain of salt. But in those 21 starts, 22.6 points, 5.4 boards, 5.1 assists, 1.2 steals, 47% from the field, 40% from three, 3.2 made threes per game. And he's also a great free throw shooter, who's starting to get there a little bit more. I mean, he's, mid to high 80s. So in category leagues, that's a pretty nice boost. All right. What else do we have to get to from the weekend? I guess we could go back to the Warriors and say that Draymond Green, he will not be retiring. He sounds like he kind of threatened to retire in the midst of this suspension. He's officially no longer suspended. He's been reinstated. However, he's now on this return to play ramp up process with Golden State. Doesn't sound like there's an official date that he could be back. I think he probably sits Wednesday. They're at home against the Pelicans. And we should get at least some sort of update by Friday because they're heading out on a 4-game road trip. So whether or not he travels with them to Chicago, this goes Chicago, Milwaukee, Memphis, Utah. I think that should give us an indication whether, one, he's available to play Friday or could return at some point during that 4-game swing.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten questions, or I've seen people wonder, do I pick Draymond up now? When should I pick him up? Do I wait, etc.? To be honest, if you're in a 12-team league, I don't think you have to pick him up. He's ranked, 115th on the season. It's possible. Last year he was 65th. Maybe he starts trending again in that direction. Just don't drop anybody that's like a guaranteed top 80 player for him. Like, absolutely do not do that. But yeah, what do we expect? I mean, maybe they ramp him up a little bit, but they're still trying to win games. So they got to get him back in there. He's helping them win games or keeping them in it, I think. I still think as much of a problem, quote unquote, as he still is a very good player who's crucial to the way they run offense and defense. Yep. The biggest impact in fantasy might just more so be like the fewer minutes for Kuminga, or maybe Kuminga gets traded after he complained to Shams about his role. So, yeah.
What about Trayce Jackson-Davis? I mean, let's say Draymond's back Friday.
Yeah.
Are you dropping him if you picked him up in a deeper league?
I would wait just because I think there's Steve Kerr loves Kevon Looney, but Looney has just not been that good this year. And I just think there's a chance that Trayce Jackson-Davis has almost just usurped Looney in the rotation. I don't know if Looney's going to start getting DMPs, but Jackson-Davis looks pretty good. He's very athletic, gives them a new dynamic. They can lob it to him. I would hang on and just see what the minutes do. I wouldn't preemptively drop TJD.
All right, keep the questions coming in the chat. We will hit those in a bit. We got to take care of some business. We got to talk some waiver wire, and then we will go rapid fire through those questions. So we see them, we acknowledge them. We will answer all of those as the podcast goes along. Let's do waiver wire, Alex. Any major ads for you, whether it was in your NFBKC, stake, any of your other big-time leagues?
I didn't have any major ads this week. I felt like it's kind of slim pickings for the waiver wire. I will say one move I did make in the 16-team league, so it's a deep move. I grabbed Dennis Smith Jr. Off the Brooklyn Nets.
I saw that, and I wish I would have done the same. I like that.
I have had him on my watch list for a long time and trying to find a way to get him on my roster. I wrote about him in an article, I can't remember when, maybe like a month ago, him and Day'Ron Sharpe, just being like, hey, if you're in a 16-team league, you got to look at these guys. But yeah, he's kind of stealing minutes from Spencer Dinwiddie. And he had a 10-point, 10-assist outing against Portland yesterday. Went for 13, 12, and 7 with 2 steals the game before. Just all season has been pretty good. So if you're in a deep league, I think it's someone worth looking at, basically.
No, I think you're totally right. I wish I would have bid more for him in the stake league. That's a 16-teamer for reference. So, if you're in a 12-teamer, maybe you're not quite thinking about this, but last 6 games for Dennis Smith, 10 points, 4.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals. Ultimately, I think that's what you're chasing most. He's not going to give you really anything from 3. Like that might just never come. You're hoping for mid to low 40s field goal percentage. I think you can live with that. And obviously Dennis Smith had a decent run at times last year as well as a member of the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, in his 15 starts with Charlotte, he averaged 11 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7 assists, almost 2 steals per game. I mean, he was putting up major steal numbers, had a couple, 3, 4, 5, 6 steal games in that span. Again, 3-pointers, negligible. If he just gives you 1, you're happy with that. And you're hoping it doesn't drag the field goal or the field goal percentage down too much. But I like that one quite a bit. I was relatively quiet in most of my leagues as well. It was very slim pickings in the stake league this week. I did pick up Cody Martin, not Caleb Martin, Cody Martin, who after like a year and a half is finally back. He's now played 7 games in a row. Missed a ton of time. The Hornets were super vague. They kind of went week to week for like 70 weeks in a row. But he's now started the last 2 games. Obviously, Gordon Hayward is injured. They've had guys banged up all over the roster. PJ Washington has missed time. Obviously, Mark Williams, who we'll talk about in a bit, he's missed time. LaMelo should be coming back soon, by the way. We got a very positive LaMelo update over the weekend. Went through a full practice yesterday. He could be back in the next week or 2. Either way, I think you kind of forget Cody Martin was a pretty big piece for this team when he was last healthy. We're talking 21, 22, but he was playing 26, 27 minutes. He was in the rotation every single night. He was starting every now and then. I think there might be a week or 2 where he's viable. Once Gordon Hayward comes back, we'll see. If he's playing 20 to 25 minutes a night, probably not. But, he's played 69 combined minutes over the last 2 games.
He made my risers and fallers column that I wrote the other day. Mostly just for like rising up out of a seat and playing NBA basketball. But
he's literally rising. Yes.
Yes. I mean, he ranked, what was this, 2 years ago, 21, 22. He ranked 169th in 8 cap, which is obviously not, that's not amazing. But if you're in a league as deep as 14 or 16, like we're talking about, very startable on 4-game weeks in this situation. And yeah, we don't really know what's going to happen with Hayward, and the whole roster is banged up. We don't necessarily have clarity a lot on like what the Hornets are even up to in general. Like they keep lying about the Mark Williams injury report. They finally, I can't remember what pod I was on. I think it was Friday. They had listed Mark Williams as doubtful for like 8 straight games or whatever. And then they finally said Mark Williams is out. And I was joking with Ken and Shannon. I'm like, oh, so he's done for the year is what they're saying. Which is, that's not really the case. But that's how I gauge the Charlotte Hornets injury report. But that's a long way of saying, yes, Cody Martin is a fine ad in 16-team leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel great about it. He is not guard eligible in ESPN. So I don't even think I'm going to be able to get him into my lineup this week. I kind of have to choose between him and Kevin Love this week. And again, this is 16-team, pretty deep league. And Kevin Love's been playing really well, man. And Jimmy Butler's going to miss at least one more game. The Heat have a couple other guys banged up. And I'm also specifically targeting rebounds right now more than anything else. So yeah, I mean, it's not like you're super fired up about either option, but that's a decision that I'm going to have to make in the next 3 hours.
I would just go with Love. You never know. He had a 14 rebound performance in 28 minutes against the Lakers the other day. Like, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler, like I said, we already know he's going to miss at least one game to begin the week, could be more. And Caleb Martin is doubtful for their next game as well. So that's part of the thinking on that decision. I don't think I did anything else in that league. I do still have DeLon Wright there, who just banking on the steals. He's gonna give you like 1 to 3 steals. It feels like every night. Probably not going to do anything else, but I'm essentially punting assists in that league. So that's whatever. I don't really care what he gives me there. Just looking at steals in NFBKC, it was a very quiet week overall. I think there were only 7 claims in my entire league. I finally dropped Mitchell Robinson, who I've been trying to drop for 3 weeks, and nothing has been successful. So he's finally off the team. Picked up Norman Powell. Just needed another guard. Nothing crazy there. The other pickups were Harrison Barnes, and somebody dropped Chris Paul to pick up Harrison Barnes, which is interesting. Simone Fontecchio, Derek Jones was picked up, Cody Martin, Santi Aldama, and Duop Reath. Kind of surprised Derek Jones was out there, to be honest. That was somebody that I was in on and didn't get.
Yeah, in my league, it looks pretty much the same. Someone added Josh Hart at the very top for 94. That's kind of crazy in my opinion, but do what you got to do. Yeah, Cody Martin and Fontecchio both in there. Yeah, those guys. I mean, Fontecchio, he's one of those guys where he feels like a. Oh man, who is that guy that used to play for the Nets during like their tanking era? I'm gonna have to look it up.
Anybody. But can you give me more descriptors?
He's just a wingy white guy from Russia. I think the Bucks had him for a minute. But
white
then
wing from Russia.
I'll have to look it up. But
okay,
yeah, Fontecchio, it's just they're giving him minutes. I mean, if he's gonna play as much as he's been playing, he's a steals and threes guys right now. Like there's always room for that on in a category league. And then the Reath ad is fine with Ayton. Who knows how long he's going to miss, but Reath's put up numbers. I can't really argue with that.
Now you got me looking at old Nets rosters, like Sergei Karasev. That comes to mind. I don't think he ever really played enough.
Rodion's Kurucs.
Oh, yes, you're right. Wow.
Yeah, he's giving me Kurucs vibes. Fontecchio. He's not from Russia. I got from Latvia. I'm sorry. But yes, little Kurucs vibes.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. That's about it, I think, in terms of notable ads in the stake league. I'm trying to see who the highest value ad was this week. I mean, Shannon added Precious Achiuwa. No major
Shannon's
issue
like a Achiuwa guy. Yeah, so
he is. Yeah, it is what it is. Some people are Achiuwa guys, some people aren't. Larry Nance was added. Amen Thompson was dropped for that. Somebody picked up Bismack Biyombo for $10 out of a $100 budget.
I saw Grizzlies fans complaining on Twitter about Bismack, but I mean, they keep they started Tillman, and then they played him barely at all. It's like I don't really know what to make of that situation, but if you need rebounds, and this is a 16-team league, you need rebounds. I don't know how many games they play this week. If they play 4, it's pretty defensible. Plus, at this point, I mean, I don't know about you, I have like $80 of fab. left and the league ends in a couple months. So it's like, you got to start emptying the clip at some point.
Yeah, I don't know that the mega waiver wire ad is coming down the pike at any point. Like it's not like the NFL where Nick Chubb goes down and then there's Jerome Ford, this very clear guy who's going to start every single week. I think most of those guys tend to emerge over the first 3 or 4 weeks. The one other guy I want to touch on, and I was in on him in stake. I did not win him, partially because he also went for $10. Can't believe we're saying this. Goga Bitadze. I think he's the guy I want right now in Orlando. I'm done with Wendell Carter. I went and grabbed him in a few leagues a couple of weeks ago when he was on the way back. The knee issues kind of cropped back up. He's missed 3 of the last 6 games, and even when he's been out there, just has not looked anything like his former self whatsoever. And even if he starts when healthy, which he has not started the last 3 games he's played, Bitadze's been way more productive. And I don't think Wendell Carter to me needs close to 30 minutes to give you what you're expecting. And I think Bitadze's shown that if he plays in the low 20s, like he could still be a 4 game starter in a 16-team league.
Bitadze is one of my. I feel like I've been a Bitadze guy for far too long. Like since he got drafted, I'm like, why don't they give this guy more minutes? And it's weird how 5 years later, Wendell Carter is the one who can't get on the floor and play well. But yeah, I mean, if they're going to continue starting him and Wendell Carter is not going to play that well, I don't think the Magic, relatively speaking, I mean, they gave up a decent amount for Carter in terms of giving up Vucevic, who's a good player and was good for them. But they don't have so much invested in Wendell Carter that we have to play this guy 32 minutes a game. This has to work out. I think they're trying to win games. They're going to play whoever's helping them win games. They're not as much in development mode as I think people sort of assume they are.
Speaking of winning games, we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. And Underdog Fantasy is the #1 platform for games such as NBA Best Ball and DFS Player Pick'em contests. If you have not tried Underdog yet, new users get a first-time deposit bonus up to $100. That's $100 in free play. Basically, they will match at Underdog. You also get a free 6-month subscription to our site, rotowire.com. All you got to do, type in the promo code RWNBA, all one word, just RWNBA. Again, that is RWNBA. Visit underdogfantasy.com, or you can download their app. It's fantastic. One of the better user interfaces that you're going to see in a Pick'em or DFS app. And again, use that code RWNBA to claim your free RotoWire subscription and get that deposit bonus. All right, let's get to some of the questions in the chat. Again, if you're watching along live, throw questions in there. We will start mowing through those. We've got another 20-30 minutes to play with here, so we'll hit as many as come through the chat. Johnny said, "What's up, fellas?" What's up, Johnny? Welcome back to the stream. What is the story with Mark Williams? Do we have any insight? Yeah, we kind of hit on this when we were talking about Charlotte. I mean, they've had so many injuries that we're keeping an eye on. Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington has missed time lately. Obviously, LaMelo, who should be back soon if you missed that earlier. I mean, Mark Williams, he's been out since December 8th. That was the last time we've seen him. So exactly a month ago, no clear timetable. That's according to Rod Boone of the Charlotte Observer, who's covered the team for a long time. Lower back contusion is all we're saying. I mean, bruised lower back, if that's really what it is, it doesn't seem like it should be that long of an issue. Or you kind of wonder if there's something else going on there. But at least we finally have the no clear timetable as opposed to just day to day, which was super frustrating if you're a manager in weekly leagues.
He sat 12 straight games while being listed as doubtful. Hornets continue to make a mockery of the NBA's injury reporting guidelines. I think, look, it's our latest note. Rod Boone of the Charlotte Observer said that he's been doing pregame work. Now, that could just mean a layup line and some stretching. So he hasn't actually been at practice yet. I don't think you can start projecting him to come back at any point until he starts participating in practice in any respect. This is how we also judge guys like Ben Simmons. It's like, well, when's Ben Simmons expected to be back? Well, I'm not going to even start thinking about it until he starts playing 3-on-3 practice, and probably not even then. So Mark Williams, it's not the same type of guy in terms of that injury history, but it's the same. You have to have the same mindset. So keep playing Nick Richards.
All right, Dennis says, Lou Dort or Aaron Nesmith, looking for a streamer for tonight's slate. We have 6 games. I got to be honest, I'm going to be pretty locked in on the college football championship game, Washington and Michigan. But 6 games on the NBA slate tonight. So Nesmith is home for the Boston Celtics. Dort and the Thunder, they are on the road at Washington.
I view these guys pretty equally, but I will say the matchup definitely favors OKC in terms of just like what are the chances, because both these guys are going to get their steals and their rebounds here and there, but what are the chances the guy pops off for 20 points? And I think if you're Dort against the Washington Wizards, there's a better chance you're also popping off for 20 points instead of being Aaron Nesmith against the Celtics, unless you really, really deeply believe in the revenge narrative against Boston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is tough for me. It's really, really close. I think I might lean Nesmith as of right now. And, hopefully you could take this decision closer to game time because Bruce Brown is questionable tonight. And I think if Bruce Brown doesn't play, that's obviously huge for Nesmith. I think that could mean a boost in minutes. And, obviously there's the potential for that one to turn into a blowout, perhaps in Boston's favor. But I think Indy can hang around. They're at home. And, Nesmith has been the better steals producer of late. Obviously, you're looking for threes there as well. The three-point shooting has been down, but he had that 7 3-pointer game against the Knicks at the end of December. So very comparable players. In a one-game scenario, obviously it could go either way. But if Bruce Brown doesn't play, I think I would lean toward Nesmith in that spot. All right, Chad says, "Hey guys, is Andre Jackson, rookie for the Bucks, is he purely relegated to add when Middleton misses time, or is there a path for him to regain a role?" Good question here. Obviously, the Bucks are kind of waiting for somebody to emerge. I was hoping that would be Marion Beauchamp, and he's shown it in spurts, but obviously has not taken a huge step forward in year 2. Andre Jackson, second-round pick out of UConn. I would say probably stay away from Jackson. I mean, I guess if Middleton were to miss like a stretch of time, sure, then you could talk me into it. But I think Andre Jackson, the Bucks love him. He is a much more effective real-life player than fantasy player.
He is 100%. Yes, a real life guy who's out there for his wing defense. Mm-hmm. And because per 36, he still only averages 9, 6, and 3 with a steal. So even if it was the best case scenario for him, he's barely going to be fantasy relevant in like 12-team leagues, if even like 14-team leagues. So yeah, it's a stay away.
Yeah. Definitely a stay away in 12-team for me. 14, 16, then it just kind of depends who's out there. Even then, just not super appealing. I think you could probably find a better option. Derek says, "Who's the better ad between Goga and Nick Richards for the short-term / long-term value? Need someone to replace Mark Williams while he's on IL."
Well, I think Goga, you might get the best of both worlds. I think Richards has. I think his ceiling games are going to be higher, but the Wizards are the Magic, clearly like Bitadze as like a long-term guy. Once assuming Mark Richards comes back, which it seems like he will, then Richards is going to go back to playing backup minutes. But I think it's possible Bitadze starts and plays 20 to 30 minutes every game for the rest of the year.
I would say in the extremely short term, I would go Richards because PJ Washington's out for at least one game. And, we'll see if that extends. I think Richards for this week, perhaps. But if you're talking short to middle term, like here to the All-Star break, then give me Bitadze. Because we also don't know on Mark Williams. Like, he could be back in a week for all we know. It's allegedly a bruised lower back. I have no idea what's going on there. But no, I think you're right. We talked a little bit about Bitadze earlier. I mean, he's started 75, 80% of their games so far this season. We don't trust Wendell Carter whatsoever. He's been the better shot blocker as well. I think there's maybe a little bit of a fallacy with Richards that he has the shot blocking upside. Like with Richards, you're more looking for field goal percentage, low end points, rebounds, and he over his last 6-7 games when he's played big minutes, he's barely averaging over a block per game. Whereas Goga Bitadze in the 25 games he started this season, 8.6 points, 7.3 boards, 1.9 blocks. So I think if you're after the block specifically, I would go Bitadze.
And Bitadze's always been a good shot blocker.
Yeah.
Like as a sophomore, he played 13 minutes a game and blocked a shot and a half. So yeah, that should stick.
Kevin asks, have you guys heard anything on Cade Cunningham? I have not heard anything beyond what the greater fantasy public has heard, and that is that he left last night's game with a left knee strain. Usually not good, especially for a team that has nothing to play for. They have a back-to-back to begin the week, tomorrow and Wednesday. Sacramento and San Antonio, both of those are home games. They play Houston at home on Friday. The fact that they don't play today means we maybe won't get an update until either later today or perhaps tomorrow morning. Would not be surprised at all if he misses some time. Again, considering where the Pistons are at here, I don't think we need to rehash that.
Yeah, we just don't have that much more info. I mean, the only thing I can kind of offer is like strain versus sprain. Strain is a damage to the muscle. Sprain is a damage to the ligaments. He has a strain. In general, it's hard to say in general which is worse because it's all degrees. People talk about like a grade 3 ankle sprain versus a grade 1 ankle sprain. It's kind of the same with strain versus sprain. So it's a muscle issue, which young players can generally return from sooner than older players, but we just don't know to what degree,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no real update is kind of what we can't really speculate. Detroit has not released any information that we have that nobody else does. Derek says, looking to round out my punt assist 12-team 9-cat team, would you recommend Podziemski or Caruso for the rest of season? So again, 12-team 9-category league. He's punting assists. Podziemski or Caruso?
I think I would go Podziemski. I think he has more. Well, first of all, he's hurt less. You can't look at Alex Caruso's game logs and find a stretch of like 9 games where he stayed healthy for the past like 2 seasons. I mean, seriously, go back to the year before, the year so that worries me. And also, like, yes, Caruso is a better steals producer than Podziemski, but Podziemski is not bad steals, like 1.8 steal rate per 36 minutes. He averages 1.5 steals, and he might, for the rest of the season, he might be playing, 20 to 30 minutes a game. So I would rather have Pods.
I lean that way too, more upside. And, there also could be a significant change in team context for Caruso coming at some point too, which could be positive, could be negative. Probably most likely that it's a net neutral. But yeah, I would lead Podziemski for the upside. T says, any LaMelo Ball updates? Yeah, if you're just tuning in, we've touched on this a little bit. Obviously check out our news feed over at rotowire.com. A good deal of that is not behind the paywall, so you can get all your fantasy news there. We have good news on LaMelo Ball, who has not played since November 26th. My NFBKC team is rejoicing after he put in a full practice on Sunday, did some 5-on-5 scrimmaging as well. All indications he's not going to play tonight against Chicago. I'd be surprised if he's out there Wednesday against Sacramento, but they begin a 3-game road trip on Friday, starting with the Spurs. They're then at Miami Sunday, at New Orleans Wednesday. So this, like Draymond, like we were saying earlier, I think if he travels with the team on Friday, that is a great indication. Obviously, there's still a chance, he could play Wednesday against the Kings. But I think we're probably looking at, barring some sort of setback, maybe one more week without LaMelo. I'll say I'm not putting him in my lineup to start the week at the NFBKC.
Yeah, once a guy starts practicing 5-on-5, I would consider like a week to be a fine, like just in your own head, like estimated. Like if he's back by next Monday, that seems about right. It's always like 3 days would be the short end, 10 days would be the long end of that timetable. So he should be back soon.
All right. Jay Sizzle says, I wanted to drop Malik Monk for Shade and Sharpe in a 9-cat 10-team head-to-head league. Is that a good move? So drop Malik Monk and pick up Shade and Sharpe.
I don't think I would do that. I want to double check, but no, I wouldn't do that. I've kind of been out on Sharpe all year. When everyone's healthy for them, he's just like only a points guy, like points and threes. He doesn't really, I don't know. Like when everyone's healthy, he just is not like a playmaker for them. And Monk's going to give you the stats that are way harder to find off the waiver wire. The past 15 games for Monk, he's averaging 15 points and 6 assists, which is way more valuable than like Shade and Sharpe averaging 20 points and 3 assists. So I would lean on Monk, especially since the Kings are just done with Herter, it feels like, so they're just going to give Monk a ton of minutes the rest of the year.
Yeah, Malik Monk's basically, right at rank 100 over the last month or so. He had that big 37-point game last week that's doing some work. I mean, he's very up and down. I have him in stake league, so I'm watching Malik Monk just about every single night. And, he's usually settling in the, 14, 15 points, give you 2 or 3 threes. The assists have actually been really consistent this year. And, again, I'm kind of punting assists in that league, so that doesn't really matter. But I would still lean Monk. I think there's a chance later in the year that Shade and Sharpe, goes back to playing like 36 minutes a night. But I think on balance, you're going to want Malik Monk. I mean, he's been a better fantasy asset, even if Shaedon Sharpe maybe has more upside long term. All right, is Alec Burks worth a pickup? I'll tell you, I clicked through Alec Burks. I know he was picked up by somebody. I think it was Steve Belanda in the RotoWire Stake League this weekend. If you're in a points league, maybe. I think I would consider that. I mean, Alec Burks has been a kind of a disaster in terms of field goal percentage. He's at like 37% on the year. I know lately he's been a lot better. Last 7 games, 17 points on 47% shooting. He's given you over 3 3-pointers per game. I still think I'm probably staying away in category leagues. I don't really trust. We've seen multiple Pistons, have like a great 2-week run and then just fall off a cliff minutes wise.
Yeah, I think it's 16-team league like we're talking about, go ahead. Like if a guy's hot, they're playing him a decent amount of minutes, just go for it. Like we know Burks can put up numbers. 14-team league, to me, he's more of like a streamer. Even at 16-team league, he's more like a streamer. But yeah, it's a points league thing for the most part. Yeah, I don't really know what the Pistons are up to be honest. Their rotation changes all the time, and he's a veteran on a team that's horrible. So he could get benched or traded or fake injury or just minutes pulled. It's just really variable.
Yeah, hard to get excited about Alec Burks, but again, in a deeper league, I think there's some upside there. All right, Jeezy Hoop Diary says, any word on any of the Suns playing the back-to-back tonight? That is a good question. Phoenix, of course, was in action last night, home against Memphis, ended up losing that game 121-115. They're now at the LA Clippers tonight. Kevin Durant, as of right now, I believe we have a marked as potential rest, but there hasn't really been an indication. Is he on the injury report?
I don't think he's on the injury report because when the teams play the night before, they don't have to release their injury report until later in the afternoon. We may actually get an update in like 6 minutes from them because the injury reports always release basically like on the half-hour mark. Mm-hmm. So yeah, within the next hour, we should get word on at least an official status.
Yeah. I think Durant is the one I would worry about. I mean, he's played in back-to-backs when healthy this season, so it's not like that's been a trend, but obviously missed time before making his return, so that's something to monitor. There's been, to answer the question very literally, there's been no indication that, Beal or Devin Booker could sit, and Beal did play in a back-to-back. It was his second and third game back from the latest absence. That would have been New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. He played in both halves. So unless he picked something up last night, I think those guys should probably be good to go. All right. Musk Tusk says, LaVine's questionable again. Now shoulder soreness. What the hell? What the hell, Alex?
What the hell? I don't really have any. I don't have any insight on that. It is frustrating. Maybe that was it. Maybe it's like, hey, look, he's healthy. All right, he's good. He's good. We're holding him out. You trade for him. It'll be good. No, I don't know. It's just annoying.
Well, he did go from probable to questionable, which is interesting. It's one thing to just throw the Anthony Davis, LeBron, questionable tag out there as like a phantom designation. But I think when you go from probable to questionable, that's something to monitor. I don't know. Maybe just shoulder was a little sore from chucking up shots for the first time in a while. I have no idea. I mean, he played 30 minutes off the bench. I don't think he's going to continue to come off the bench. I'd be surprised, if he plays in their next game, if it's not back in the starting lineup. Obviously, they are in action tonight at Charlotte, so we should get some word on him. But my guess is it's nothing too serious. I think teams tend to err on the side of caution these days. I think the NBA kind of like spooked them into that a few years ago. The injury reports are just more extensive than they used to be, and there's really been no kind of indication how serious that is. All right, Point Blank Mish says, thoughts on Lillard's shooting slump at the moment. Touched on this in the intro. I mean, I have him in the stake league. It's been super frustrating. I would love to have somebody like an SGA, where you're just like every single night he's out there. Worst case scenario, you're getting like 25, 7 and 7, and Lillard on balance has been totally fine. The season long averages look good. Obviously, he's been like 25% from 3 over his last 7 or 8 games. He's gone through these slumps before. I actually looked it up the other day because I was like out of frustration. I'm like, I feel like he's had more like really bad games this year than ever before. So I just searched like how many games has he shot under 40% from the field, and he's only really like 1 or 2 games ahead of his normal pace as far as how many of those down games he has. So I think it's a case of me and probably the public just paying more attention to Lillard's stat line night to night than we were when he was on a 500 team in Portland.
Yeah, that too. And plus, I mean, he's he's taking like 3-4 fewer shots per game, fewer free throws, fewer threes. So like when Lillard was in Portland and he shot 40% from the field, he'd still score like 25 points, 24 points. And then he'd get hot and he score like 40. But then in Milwaukee now, it's like he has a bad game, he scores 18. And then people are like, anytime someone sees a number under 20, they're like, horrible game. This guy's cooked, like it brings a ton of attention to a star player. So I think it's a mini slump. I know he's going through personal stuff. He's out for tonight's game. So maybe things have been on his mind.
Yeah, the dreaded personal absence. And going into a 4-game week, if you got to lock him in tonight, that's tough. But I think I'll probably end up doing that by default. All right, Chad, another question says, Grant Williams has been effective when healthy, which hasn't been that often. Are the Mavs actively shopping to upgrade him, or is it just Siakam because it's Siakam?
I mean, I've been like off Grant Williams. I was begging people to sell high on Grant Williams at the beginning of the year. I don't know. I mean, past how many games is this? 14 games. He's averaging 7 points, 1.2 threes. I mean, he's not doing anything in fantasy. If I was the Mavs, I'd be looking to upgrade him. But I don't know. I just, if I were them, I'd want Siakam. I'd be happy trading Grant Williams for Siakam. Get a third star in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you said it. I mean, I was actually kind of high on Grant Williams, relatively speaking. Like I took him at the end of a bunch of drafts thinking, some of the permanent stuff in Boston was encouraging. He should be in a more consistent role. I don't know. I would argue that even when healthy, he's been pretty underwhelming. If you look at his last 14 games, 7 points, 4 rebounds, not really giving you much on defense. Only 1.2 made threes, pretty low volume. And that's on over 26 minutes a night. So I'm just not really all that excited about him.
I haven't looked at the Mavericks on-off court this season. He is minus 16 per 100 possessions.
Not good.
Wow, that is not good. I thought he was going to be better than that. I mean, I think he is a better real-life player than fantasy player, but apparently things are not going that well when he's out there. So I don't know.
All right, good question from Mish. He says, are we projecting a big hit for Rozier when LaMelo Ball comes back, or does that make Rozier better?
Yeah, this was a question at the beginning of this year because Rozier field goal percentage was down for Rozier last year when LaMelo was out. I think he'll take a small hit. I mean, just based on the numbers this season, in games that LaMelo has missed, Rozier is averaging 8 more fantasy points per game. So he goes from 36 with LaMelo to 44 without LaMelo. So yes, I mean, just from a raw stats perspective, you probably should expect a fairly sizable hit to Rozier.
Yeah, I mean, Rozier has been in 8 category leagues. He's been a top 25 player without LaMelo this season. I don't think that continues. Like he's not there. LaMelo is going to be, when healthy, the 8th to 12th best fantasy player. I don't think there's room for 2 Charlotte Hornets in the top 25. So I don't think it's like a massive hit. Like he's still obviously very viable and you're starting him every week, but no, he's not going to continue to be a top 25 asset once LaMelo comes back. All right. I got Jimmy Butler for Vassell. Is this a win? Yes, I think.
This is an interesting trade because Butler just can't stay healthy.
Right.
So to me, it's just, this is a very classic, like health for, Vassell's been healthy all year. He's playing better lately. Is it a win? To be determined. Let's say that. I think if Butler basically plays, 90% of the games the rest of the year, I think you probably win. But I would be a little worried about the injuries. It's possible this just ends up being a very even trade at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because obviously Butler's the better player, but tonight's going to be, I think, his 8th absence in the last 9 games. They're still kind of going game to game with him. Could be more, who knows? And obviously Miami is in a position where they'll be, you'd think, more careful with him, whereas San Antonio has no reason not to throw Vassell minutes the rest of the way. So yeah, I mean, this is a trade that I would make if I'm like doing really well in a league and you're like, I just want to, kind of add some more upside here. If you're kind of somebody who's dropping in the standings because Jimmy Butler's been out of your lineup and you need instant production to stay alive, then yeah, I see both sides of that. All right. Chris Michael P says, is Cam Thomas not worth holding anymore? This is a good one. I mean, he's went on. Few people could score at the rate that Cam Thomas could score. I think the Nets are kind of onto his tricks of late and are starting to reduce his minutes and realize that he may not be a winning player. You know, he had a string of 15 straight starts through most of December. He's now come off the bench in 6 straight, averaging 21.5 minutes per game in that span. Shooting percentage is way down, both from 3 and from the line and overall. We talked about Dennis Smith, sneaking his way into more minutes. It's cut into Dinwiddie a little bit, but it's come more out of Cam Thomas.
Yeah, he all he really does out there is score. He doesn't get his teammates involved. He doesn't play defense. I try not to reference on off all the time because people just don't want to hear that, and it can be deceptive. You look at Zeke Najee's on off, and it makes him look like he's the worst player in the world because he plays when Jokic doesn't play. But Cam Thomas is -12. He has the worst on off on the Nets, and he's not playing that well right now. The team in general hasn't played that well lately, which is why I think they reduced his minutes. I think you're completely fine to move on from him. Honestly, if you're in a 16-team league, I get wanting to hang on. I don't hate it. But in a standard 12-teamer, I think you just move on and just start streaming guys in.
All right, we'll hit a few more before we get out here. Got about 5 more minutes or so. In a 10-team points league, should I drop Suggs for Tre Jones?
I don't think you have to do that necessarily. It's interesting that Tre Jones is starting. He's played well in his 2 starts, but we saw that all of last year, right? And he averaged 29 fantasy points per game last year, basically a fantasy point per minute. So if he's going to start playing 30 minutes consistently, yeah, he'll be good. But Suggs is averaging 27 fantasy points right now. And I don't think there's any reason to assume it's going to get significantly worse. I mean, who knows about Fultz? If you really believe Fultz is going to come back and steal his minutes, I guess you could maybe entertain dropping Suggs. I don't think this is going to win or lose your league by doing this move. I think it's honestly, it's just as much how much you believe in the individual player and how much you trust the Spurs and Greg Popovich to not tank hard at the end of the year. That would, I guess, maybe be one of my major concerns is what if they just stop playing all their vets and the phantom injuries at the end of this year like they did last year and all that stuff. That would suck.
All right, to go back to the Suns question real quick, we did get an injury report from Phoenix. Kevin Durant is probable. Booker and Beal are not on the injury report. So looks like the big 3 should be out there tonight. All right, we'll go rapid fire through the rest of these, Alex. Do up Reath or Matisse Thybulle?
I think we gotta go Reath.
I think for now, it's tethered directly to DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, pick up Reath now, and then when Ayton comes back, pick up Thybulle later for kind of a deep league stream.
Yeah, Ayton could return at some point this week. They're on a 3-game road trip. Billups said earlier this week that maybe he plays in the next 3, so keep an eye on that. But Moses Brown, one of their other depth pieces at center, is undergoing surgery, so there should still be a nice runway for Reath to see minutes even once Ayton comes back. All right, we talked about a similar situation involving Chris Paul earlier. Should I drop CP3 since he's injured and Draymond Green is coming back?
I've really preached holding on to Chris Paul throughout most of this year just because he's Chris Paul and he's still playing fairly well. But I don't hate the idea of dropping him. I think I would obviously if you have an IL, put him in there. But if you're in most people who play fantasy playing a 10-team points league. And in a 10-team points league, I think he's droppable. He's averaging 27 fantasy points a game. He's out for a month plus. If you really need the spot, I think it's acceptable to drop him. Yeah.
Speaking of drops, is Andre Drummond a drop? And then the options would be to pick up Derek Jones or Dennis Smith. And this is a 12-team, 9-category league.
I am not dropping Drummond until I see Vucevic play for a week. Drummond's upside is too high for you to be dropping him the second Vucevic comes back because Vucevic is old and he's got a soft tissue injury. a groin, those get re-pulled all the time. Same with hamstring. So I would hang on to Drummond right now.
So Drummond started with Vucevic playing off the bench in their last game. I think that probably reverses, tonight. Chicago's at Charlotte. Even if Drummond is playing, if he could just get to like 16 to 18 minutes, I still think it's worth it just for the rebounds. I mean, the blocks have been there. He's also a high steals player. Like, you don't really think about that with him. In a category league, you're going to have to take the hit to free throw shooting. He did go 3 of 10 the other night from the line. But, I mean, we're talking about a guy who, in his 5 starts for Vucevic, averaged 17.8 rebounds per game. So as someone who has Drummond and who also has Derek Jones in a league, I'm not dropping Andre Drummond right now. Maybe after this week, I would change my tune. But if you're picking up one of, let's say this guy does want to drop Drummond, Jones versus Dennis Smith.
I think, to me, Dennis Smith has more upside. So, and they're playing, I would just prefer Smith. Smith does more stuff that's tougher to find off the waiver wire. Assists with steals. So I would prefer Smith.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I think that's the way I would lean as well. If you're playing it a little safer, I think Derek Jones, is going to give you the defensive stats, but not nearly as much. Obviously doesn't really give you any assists compared to Smith. All right, we'll hit 2 or 3 more and then we got to be out of here. I want to trade Jayson Tatum. His ankle issue is concerning me. What is his value right now? It's been somewhat of a disappointing season for Tatum. I always say he's like the safest first-round pick you can make. He's basically been returning like mid to late second-round value this season, which maybe to be expected with the additions that Boston made this season. If I'm trading him, I'm not going to take a loss, right? Like, I'm not going to trade him for like Terry Rozier or something like that. Like, I'm trying to get somebody who is going in that same range because Jayson Tatum is still ultra safe. Like, he never misses games, even when you're adding, 3 all-star talents around him. Like, he still puts up big time numbers. I was actually entertaining throwing out a Dame for Tatum trade in the stake league. I would expect that to be declined, but I think that's a reasonable deal.
I think you just, like Nick said, you find somebody in the similar range, find someone in your league who needs what Tatum does. Like, you could probably move him for like Anthony Edwards. Maybe see if someone will trade you Scotty Barnes, Devin Booker, maybe Maxey. That could end up being a slight loss, but that's like the range of guys we're talking about.
Yeah, I wouldn't go below that at all. Again, it feels like Tatum's been a little disappointing. He's still, an easy top 20 guy and could be a top 15 guy the rest of the way. All right, we'll end on this one from Malik. Is Max Strus worth dropping this week for someone like Derek Jones? Obviously, the Cavs only have 1 game, so that's what we're looking at here. 10-team, 10-category league. He says the 10th category is double-doubles. He could also drop Sadiq Bey instead of Max Strus. So I think the crux of the question is, on a 1-game week like this, is it penal enough to drop somebody like Max Strus, or can you afford to just throw him in a bench slot for a week?
I think I would hang on to Bey. Bey's playing pretty well. You have Eason, Melton, and Lively on IL, so you need a boost for steals and blocks. I don't hate the idea of dropping Strus to, if you're going, assuming you are going to start Derek Jones. Strus has been doing some stuff in terms of like the assist category, but his shooting has just been really bad lately. I don't know when that comes back. I think he needs other guys to set up shots for him. He's not a good shot creator himself, so I'm fine with that move. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I would expect someone to probably pick up Strus, just because of the volume, 3-point shooting. Like, even though, the percentages have been ghastly lately, but he's still, last 10 games, it's been a major downswing. He's still hitting 3.1 threes per game. So there is value there, and I think you're totally right. I think he's actually, in a roundabout way, been harmed quite a bit by Mobley and Garland being out of the lineup. So yeah, if you drop him, I just wouldn't expect necessarily to get him back. It's somewhat of a risk, but obviously you can't start him on a 1-game week, and you're in kind of a unique situation already having IL stocked up with Eason, Melton, and Lively. All right, that'll do it, guys. We appreciate all the great questions in the chat. As always, makes the second half of the pod a lot of fun. You can find this archived on YouTube if you want to watch back, share it with your friends. Go like, subscribe to that YouTube channel, RotoWire Fantasy Basketball. That helps us out a ton. You can always find our streams on the RotoWire Twitter accounts as well. And you can find the audio version of all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. Spotify, Apple, just search RotoWire Fantasy Basketball. could check out, we got fantasy baseball pods heating up, fantasy football still going on. Anything you need, just search RotoWire on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Alex, fun chat with you as always, man. I'll talk to you on XM later this week, and we'll be back next Monday.